In the scorching deserts of Arabia, where survival itself demanded strength, a young boy named Khalid ibn al-Walid was growing into a warrior unlike any other. Born into the powerful Quraysh tribe of Mecca, Khalid came from a family respected for leadership, wealth, and military skill. From childhood, he was surrounded by the sounds of galloping horses, clashing swords, and stories of tribal battles fought beneath the blazing Arabian sun. While other children played in the streets, Khalid trained endlessly in the desert, learning how to ride at incredible speed and strike targets with deadly precision. His father believed weakness had no place among leaders, so Khalid was pushed harder than most boys his age. As he grew older, his intelligence became just as noticeable as his strength. Khalid could study the movement of riders across sand dunes and quickly predict how a battle would unfold. Older warriors were shocked by the young man's calmness during dangerous situations. He rarely acted from emotion. Instead, he observed carefully, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Soon, his reputation spread through Mecca as one of the finest horsemen in Arabia. But during this same period, a new message began spreading across the city. Muhammad was calling people toward Islam, preaching about one God and equality among all people. Many leaders of Quraysh saw this movement as a threat to their power and traditions, and Khalid stood firmly beside his tribe. Proud, fearless, and loyal to Quraysh, he believed Islam would divide Arabia and weaken Mecca's authority. At that time, no one could imagine that this fierce enemy of Islam would one day become its greatest military champion. Feared by the armies of both Rome and Persia, the desert wind howled across the battlefield of Mu'tah as thousands of Roman and Byzantine soldiers advanced beneath shining banners. Their armor glittered under the harsh sun, and the ground trembled beneath the march of cavalry and infantry. Facing them was a much smaller Muslim army, exhausted yet determined. Fear spread through the ranks as the reality became clear. They were hopelessly outnumbered. Many believed this battle would end in total destruction. One by one, the Muslim commanders fell in combat. First, Zayd ibn Haritha was killed carrying the banner. Then, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib fought bravely until he too fell after losing both arms in battle. After him, Abdullah ibn Rawaha stepped forward and was also martyred. Panic began spreading among the soldiers. Dust filled the air, wounded men collapsed across the battlefield, and Roman forces pushed closer with overwhelming strength in the middle of the chaos. The surviving soldiers turned toward one man. Khalid ibn al-Walid seized the banner, though still relatively new to Islam. Khalid immediately understood the disaster unfolding around him. Instead of allowing fear to consume the army, he reorganized the scattered troops with incredible speed. He shifted cavalry between the flanks, launched sudden counterattacks, and created confusion within the Roman ranks. Throughout the night, Khalid carefully studied the battlefield and prepared a daring plan at dawn. He ordered strategic troop movements that made the enemy believe fresh Muslim reinforcements had arrived. The Romans hesitated, uncertain of what was happening. Using that moment perfectly, Khalid led a disciplined withdrawal that saved the Muslim army from complete annihilation. It was not a victory in the traditional sense, but it was something equally remarkable: survival against impossible odds. From that day forward, Arabia began to recognize the brilliance of Khalid ibn al-Walid. After the death of Muhammad, grief swept across Arabia like a storm. Many Muslims were heartbroken and uncertain about the future. But while Medina mourned, rebellion exploded across the Arabian Peninsula. Several tribes abandoned Islam completely, refusing to pay zakat and declaring loyalty to new self-proclaimed prophets. Some believed the Muslim state would collapse within weeks without the prophet's leadership. Arabia, once united, began tearing itself apart. The newly appointed caliph, Abu Bakr, faced an impossible challenge. Powerful tribes were gathering armies, preparing to attack Medina itself. Many advisors urged caution, warning that fighting so many rebellions at once could destroy the Muslims entirely. But Abu Bakr refused to show weakness. He knew the survival of Islam depended on restoring unity across Arabia. For that mission, he turned to one man above all others, Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid moved with astonishing speed across the desert, striking rebel tribes before they could unite into one massive force. His army marched through burning heat, crossing difficult terrain day and night. Wherever rebellion appeared, Khalid arrived like a thunderstorm. His tactics were unpredictable. Sometimes he attacked before dawn. Sometimes he divided enemy alliances through psychological pressure. Other times he launched sudden cavalry assaults that shattered enemy morale within minutes. The greatest threat came from Musa, a powerful false prophet who had gathered tens of thousands of followers in Yamama. The battle that followed became one of the bloodiest in Arabian history. Muslim forces suffered terrible losses, and confusion spread across the battlefield as Musalima's warriors fought fiercely. Seeing his army falter, Khalid rode directly into the chaos, rallying the soldiers around him. He reorganized broken lines and led a brutal final assault into the enemy ranks. After hours of savage combat, Musaylima was finally killed, and the rebellion collapsed. With that victory, Arabia was united once again, and Khalid's legend grew even greater. To the east of Arabia stood the mighty Sassanid Persian Empire, a superpower feared across the world for its enormous armies, heavily armored cavalry, and terrifying war elephants. Persian kings ruled over vast cities filled with wealth and power, and their generals viewed the desert Arabs as little more than scattered tribes incapable of challenging a true empire. But after uniting Arabia, the Muslims now faced a new reality. Persia was preparing for war. Once again, Khalid ibn al-Walid was chosen to lead. Khalid understood that defeating Persia required more than courage. The Persians possessed larger armies, better equipment, and years of battlefield experience. A direct confrontation on their terms could destroy the Muslim forces. So Khalid relied on speed, surprise, and strategy, leading his army through brutal desert routes that many considered impossible to cross. He appeared suddenly near Persian-controlled territories, before enemy commanders were fully prepared. The first major clash came at the Battle of Chains. Persian soldiers chained themselves together so no man could retreat during combat. Their commanders believed this would make their lines unbreakable. But Khalid recognized the weakness hidden inside their confidence. His cavalry attacked with relentless force, trapping the Persians in their own rigid formations. Once panic spread, the chained soldiers could neither escape nor maneuver properly. The battlefield turned into chaos, and the Persian army collapsed. But Khalid's greatest tactical masterpiece came later at the Battle of Yarmouk. Facing a larger Persian force, he secretly hid cavalry units behind hills while engaging the enemy from the front. As the battle intensified, his hidden horsemen attacked from both sides, surrounding the Persians completely. Trapped and overwhelmed, the enemy army was annihilated. News of these victories spread rapidly across Persia. Villagers whispered stories about the undefeated Arab commander, who moved faster than the desert wind itself. Persian generals grew nervous whenever reports arrived that Khalid ibn al-Walid was approaching, because wherever he appeared, defeat seemed to follow. The Byzantine Empire, the eastern continuation of Rome itself, now prepared for a final confrontation against the rapidly growing Muslim forces. Emperor Heraclius understood the danger better than anyone. Persia had already suffered humiliating defeats, and now Muslim armies were advancing toward Syria, one of the empire's richest and most important provinces. Determined to crush the Muslims before they became unstoppable, Heraclius gathered a massive army from across his empire. Roman veterans, Christian Arab tribes, armored cavalry, and elite soldiers marched together beneath towering banners. Their target was clear: destroy Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid knew this battle would decide the future of the region. Outnumbered once again, he relied on the tactics that had made him feared across Arabia and Persia: speed, discipline, and surprise. Before the main battle even began, Khalid led one of the most dangerous military marches in history, guiding his army through a harsh, waterless desert route that the Byzantines believed impossible to cross. When Muslim forces suddenly appeared where they were least expected, Roman commanders were stunned. The two armies finally met near the Yarmouk River for 6 days. The battlefield became a nightmare of dust, blood, and steel. Byzantine cavalry launched repeated assaults, trying to crush the Muslim flanks and force them into retreat. At several moments, the fighting became so desperate that defeat seemed near. But Khalid remained calm amid the chaos. Using highly mobile cavalry units, he moved reinforcements rapidly across the battlefield wherever danger appeared. He exploited weak points in enemy formations and coordinated counterattacks with astonishing precision. Every Roman advance was met with fierce resistance. Slowly, confusion spread among Byzantine forces as their formations began breaking apart. On the final day, Khalid launched a devastating attack that shattered the Byzantine lines completely. Soldiers fled toward dangerous ravines near the river, where thousands were trapped or killed. The once mighty Roman army collapsed in total defeat. The victory at Yarmouk changed history forever, opening Syria to Muslim rule and cementing Khalid ibn al-Walid's reputation as one of the greatest undefeated commanders the world had ever seen. After years of warfare, victories, and impossible campaigns, Khalid ibn al-Walid had become a living legend across the Middle East, from Arabia to Persia and Syria. Soldiers spoke his name with fear and admiration. He had fought in nearly 100 battles without suffering defeat. His body carried scars from arrows, swords, and spears, each wound a reminder of years spent on horseback beneath burning suns and storm-filled battlefields. Many believed Khalid would one day die gloriously in combat, sword in hand, exactly as a warrior like him was destined to die. But fate had chosen a different ending. As Muslim territories expanded rapidly, the new caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, made a surprising decision. He removed Khalid from military command despite his unmatched success. Some people had started believing victory came because of Khalid himself, rather than through faith and unity. Umar feared this admiration could become dangerous for the Muslim community. Yet, when the order arrived, Khalid accepted it without rebellion or anger. The man who had commanded armies and defeated empires quietly stepped aside in complete obedience. Years later, Khalid lived far from the glory of battle in the city of Homs. Age and countless injuries had weakened him. One night, as death approached, he looked across his scar-covered body with deep sadness. There was hardly a place untouched by battle wounds. He had survived arrows, spears, and countless swords. Yet now he lay dying peacefully in bed, instead of on a battlefield, with tears in his eyes. Khalid reportedly said that he had always hoped for martyrdom in combat. But instead, he would die like an ordinary man. A companion beside him answered softly that Khalid was known as the Sword of Allah, and no sword of Allah could ever be broken by an enemy. When Khalid ibn al-Walid died, an era of history ended. Yet centuries later, military historians still study his campaigns, and his legend continues to inspire people around the world as one of history's greatest undefeated commanders.